Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we try to help crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a pretty meaty topic. That topic is churn. Now, before we get started, today's podcast is sponsored by Virtual Causeway. Virtual Causeway is a B2B go-to-market partner who helps you generate more qualified leads, speed up your sales cycle, and grow your revenue, all without adding headcount. To learn more about them at virtualcauseway.com and mention the show for a special rate. So before we jump in, here's why today's conversation matters. Imagine implementing just one strategy from today's conversation and watching your revenue metrics shift within weeks, not months. That's exactly why we built this podcast, and that's what the goal is. Let's talk about the revenue challenges others have faced and how they've solved it. As I like to say, success leaves clues, and we're going to highlight those clues for you. All right, everybody, buckle up, because we've got one of the top sales voices as a guest with us today. And this, I got to say, this one's truly an honor for me. Mr. John Barrows. So if you've been in sales for more than 5 minutes, you know this name, and you've likely heard it quoted in meetings or in rooms across the globe. John isn't just a sales trainer. He's the sales trainer that has trained the top teams in SaaS from companies like Salesforce, Google, LinkedIn, Box, AWS. You likely follow and subscribe to his content on the JB Sales, or you listen to his Make It Happen Monday podcast. On top of all of this, he's a published author with his daughter, Charlotte, I Want to Grow Up. I want to be in sales when I grow up.
Yep.
I've had the honor of training under John at Salesforce, where the term basho was used as a verb. And then during COVID, he trained my sales team on his Filling the Funnel course. John's not just somebody who's been a massive influence in the industry. He's been a massive influence in my selling career. And whether or not he likes to know this, he continues to be. John, it's truly an honor to welcome you to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. A little bit of high expectations there. I'm not that important, but I've been around for a while, so I think longevity matters, I guess. So.
Definitely. It's been a journey. So let's try to solve some of these challenges for us. So let's kick off. And I kind of shared a little bit about you, but for others, what industries, verticals do you work in today? Selling motions? What size companies are you working with?
Yeah, I mean, the sweet spot, ICP for me is, B2B, obviously. Companies that sell probably have an ACV of over at least 10 grand or so. Sweet spot's mid-market for me. I'm not necessarily a huge enterprise complex seller. I never have been, never will be. I don't know how to play the corporate game, so I don't think I'm very good at selling into the high bit, huge corporate. SMB is I think a little bit more churn and burn. I used to sell the SMB, but for me, mid-market, mostly tech and SaaS is where a lot of my clients are. But for me, it's anybody who's trying to level up right now. Anybody who recognizes what's happening in the industry and realizes that we're a dying breed here as far as sales reps are concerned, with AI coming out so as strong as it is. And so basically anybody who gives a shit, I'm willing to work with.
Nice. So here's how we got to the topic today is, in just a quick back and forth with John, I said, hey, what's a successful revenue initiative you've ever led, or an existing challenge that you've solved or are solving? And the thing that you responded to me pretty quickly about was like, hey, going from 6 million ARR to 0 in 2 months during the tech crash in 2023.
Yeah.
Seeing it drop like that in just 2 months, I kind of think is terrifying. Yeah. So I kind of have a 2-part question to kick off. One is, how did you handle the sudden drop? And number 2, how did you refocus your game plan for rebuilding?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest 6 months I've ever had in business, period. It's not probably, it is. Because I had built this company. I never really got into this business because I wanted to build this huge company or IPO or anything like that. I just, I'm an evolutionist. I'm one where I just keep my eyes open and I'm opportunistic and I find things. And I found out that I had built a company because I could, not necessarily because I wanted to. And I fell into the same trap as almost everybody else in the SaaS industry did. It was up and to the right. Everything was up and to the right for about 10 years there. And with that hides a lot of warts and it hides a lot of problems. And it also allows you not to pay attention to the details.
Mm.
And I realized I'm not my problem. I got details I pay attention to, but accountability is probably my biggest weakness. And when I say accountability, like accountability for myself and accountability for others, like my philosophy is always you hire good people, you pay them really well, you give them all the resources, but then go do your fucking job. Like, I always tell people I'm the one that you want in your forecast review because we'll get strategy and we'll figure out and I'll get creative. But the minute you miss your forecast, I'm like, oh, fuck, like, do we have to have this conversation? Like, like putting somebody on a PIP, I'd rather punch myself in the face. Like, it's just, I can't even think about it. So what happened was I saw at the end of 20, we were 20 employees, Sell Better was a division of the organization. I saw the tea leaves happen like end of 2023. I was like, oh, okay, something's not right. Like we're heading but all right, it's just the end of the year shit. Like don't panic. Like let's go all in for, January so that we can start the year off strong. Apparently I should have paid a little bit more attention in econ class in college because I didn't realize how impactful interest rates were. I thought, oh, my mortgage and who gives a shit, right? Whatever. Like, okay, I pay a little bit more on my credit card bill. I didn't understand fundamentally what interest rates were going to do to money, And when that started to unveil itself, I started to say, okay. And so I remember with the management team, we sat down, we were like, okay, we're in trouble here, but we've seen this before because it felt like COVID in a lot of ways. And what happened in COVID was we stopped on a dime, but everybody stopped on a dime. And thankfully for us, we were structured so that we could do remote delivery. Nobody ever wanted it before COVID because everybody loved the on-site. That's the perception. And so we tried to sell remote, but nobody wanted it. The good news is we were structured to do it. And so what I did was we flattened the organization. Everybody, I didn't take a salary, but we flattened everybody's salary, no commissions, nothing. And we were like, all right, we're all in on this. And my burn wasn't that terrible. So we dropped our price down to a certain amount. We started blitzing the market, trying to help people out. And we just all of a sudden took off, right? There was a blip for a couple of months, but then all of a sudden we just lit fire like the rest of the SaaS group. So I kind of took that same like, okay, well, another like holy shit moment here. Let's do the same thing. The problem was now my burn was a lot. It was, $400,000 a month, right? And I'm not a VC backed company and I'm not a multimillionaire. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, we're in trouble here, but let's see if we can reset, restructure. And I remember going into detail with our like old customers and this new packaging, and I split up territories and I prioritized them based on previous engagement and all my reps and put them in the best territories. And I did it. I have a hard time not, the panic versus let's go. There's a fine line of that.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, and it was obviously panic. And I was wide open with my team. I'm like, guys, this isn't like an opinion of mine of when we're going to be out of business. Like, here's the P&L. Like, we're going to be out of business here. So let's go. Right. And I definitely did not manage that well. Because I was very like, hey, we can do this, but let's go, right? And based on how everything was, I probably should have taken a much different approach because it didn't go over well, quite frankly. Like everybody's like, oh, damn it, this is what I signed up for. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you signed up for. We gotta figure this out, right? But because I hadn't been as involved as I should have been in the details and all that other stuff, me now jumping in to do it, I think disrupted more than it helped, quite frankly. And I don't know how to lead other than by leading by example. And so what I ended up doing was just being like, okay, well, I don't know how to motivate at this point, right? I'm having a hard time with that. So I'm just going to show how it's done. And so I've always said, me, I always sell. I don't consider myself a trainer. I'm a sales guy who happens to train. I prospect all the time. I do all my own negotiations. I do all that stuff. And so I just put my freaking sales hat back on and I like turned it around, it was like over the top with Sylvester Stallone, right? And that's an old school reference. But anyways, you want to see a super cheesy movie, go watch out. And I just went to work. And I remember in February, you can go back and look at the blog or the post on LinkedIn. I ended up generating 49 meetings in February of 2023 and 70 meetings in Q1. And I basically just forced myself back into existence, right? And I remember talking to the team and they're like, well, I'm like, guys, like we can do this. Like, look, like, just conversations, like something's going to come out of this. And my frustration was like, they were like, well, it's because you're John Barrows and everybody knows you. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, and quite frankly, that's why I built my brand the way I did. So when shit hits the fan like this, I can leverage partners and people. And that's why I always do favors and never expect anything in return.
Right.
So that if and when I need some help, it's an easy phone call for me to make. And I was like, yeah, I get it. But it's also an activity thing. Like, look at look at this bar compared to these. So let's go. And I couldn't keep it together. But so unfortunately I had to restructure the entire business. I cut the sell better, which I never really wanted in the first place. It wasn't something I was passionate about, but it was part of the build, and it was a great little business unit. But I was like, okay, never mind. Like that's not something that's a priority for me. So I gave it to my former business partner. And then I told my trainers, and learning lessons here, everybody told me never to hire full-time, like turn them 1099s, right? So I offered them, hey, you be 1099s, but I can't carry your salary at this point. I can't carry the benefits and all that stuff. Again, I'm not a multi-millionaire here. So, but I still believe we can do this. And so ultimately it ended up going to zero, right? For a period of time. And I had to let everybody go. And I looked at my COO, Megan, who was my one and only, the one that I hired first, and she's my absolute rock. And I looked at her, I said, hey, what do you need to pay the bills, support your family? I'm like, can you come with me and can we do this? And she's like, absolutely. And so I just went bananas with activity, with networking, with partnerships, with referrals. I asked for a referral from every single person I talked to, even if it was a cold call and it didn't work. You know what I mean? If I had cold called you and you're like, yeah, John, we're not in a position, I'd be like, hey, Carl, I know you don't know me, but anybody who needs some sales training, man, if you get I hit LinkedIn, like you read about, you know what I mean? Like networking, doing all this stuff. So, it was 6 months of straight up chaos. But I tell people all the time, if there's one skill that I would recommend everybody master, it's prospecting. And when I say that, if you know how to generate meetings, you'll never go hungry. And I think that's what this predictable revenue model has taken away from sales, is it's turned everybody into an assembly line. And they expect that, they get their leads from SDRs or meetings set up from marketing. And I never really understood that, because you and I didn't grow up with that. Like I was a full cycle sales when I came out. And so to me, I never understood why I would rely on somebody else for my success. So I always looked at it as, I'm going to bake my own cake. Whatever SDRs bring to me, whatever marketing brings to me, that's the icing, that's the ice cream on the side, that's the cherry on top. But I'm going to bake my own cake. And so right now I'm hyper focused on helping sales reps become self-sufficient and become future-proof, so that they don't have to rely on their marketing, their leads, or any of that stuff, and they can adjust as things shift here, because we are now in an environment right now where we don't have a choice. Like AI is better than us at almost everything at this point.
It's really fascinating to see the shift in what it is, because I don't want to make it sound old, but it's, I guess I'll say experience. Let's say experience.
I'm about to be 50, man. I'm fucking old, so yeah.
No, I refuse to say. My wife likes to tell me you're old. I say no. I'm not there mentally. So
yeah. I'm not mentally, no, but physically, I definitely am feeling it.
Yeah, but going back to even when I started to train under you with the Basho stuff, like yes, there was a whole notion, but that full cycle rep was prominent. We saw the evolution of the predictable. Here's the SDR. Here's that BDR. But it didn't guarantee you anything. And what I think is interesting is we saw that evolution of SDRs, BDRs to be so prominent. Then we saw the emergence of PLG, and then all of a sudden came back, right? History repeats itself. So we're back now to that full cycle sales rep and that full cycle rep. And what I'm curious on even talking about this is, because the topic is churn and we're talking about AEs now, it sounds like you went from, hey, look, I'm going to hand the account off to teams to do the account management. You got this. And I don't mean, and none of what I'm saying is negative. I hope it doesn't come across.
No, I had a great team and they did a great job. I'm not like, I take full responsibility for what happened because of my approach and how I managed and all that. So I had great people. I still to this day would hire every one of them back if I was building again, but I'm not. So.
And so I think my question in this is, and it's not pointed at your team, but it's more pointed at the situation, right? It's how do you see now coming back to that full cycle? Are you now more involved in account management? Do you think that sort of, hey, I handed it off to the team and I stepped away to focus on other things? I don't want to say took your eye off, but you focused on other things. Is that maybe where somebody who's listening to this and going, holy crap, like I'm in the same situation? Is the suggestion or even the look back going, I should have been more involved in the accounts on a more regular basis and checked in with them versus handing it off? Is there a delineation still from new business to account management, or is that whole cycle, that full cycle rep, really the most important thing we need to be looking at today?
So short answer, I think yes. I think we were going back to account management before predictable revenue. That's what a sales reps was called. We were called account managers. Like that's like, so yeah, I think now maybe not, customer success, right? But staying involved with the customer so that you go from now, and the reason I say that is because I think a lot of the front end stuff, like the SDR model, I apologize to the SDRs out there, but you better level up right now. You better learn how to sell, because first of all, the inbound SDR role, I don't even know why it still exists, quite frankly. The outbound SDR role, I personally think needs to be looked at as marketing right now, because it's impression points. And I think if we look at it that way, you can justify the model. If you look at SDRs as a feeder system to sales anymore, I think it's a fool's errand. I just, asking a 22-year-old kid to get a meeting with a CISO of a mid-market, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like CISO, like executives don't want to talk to sales reps in general. They want to talk to some 22-year-old kid out of college who's going to ask them BANT questions and not be able to describe anything. Right. So I think that whole model, and I'm seeing it almost every client I have, SDR, BDR role goes under marketing and ops. Right. And so I think if you round that out with account-based marketing and intent data and all that stuff and you get hyper-focused, well, now all of a sudden you're going to feed back to full cycle sales with a sales rep who's got some experience and whatever, and can take that client who's been nurtured and has the intent and make the phone call, but super targeted, very specific, get on a conversation, add value from minute one right into that conversation and help guide them through that, and then close them. And ideally stay involved so that you can get, and I just, again, I don't know whether you should structure it this way or not, but as a sales rep, I don't know why I would just close that and say, see you later. Because A, cross-sell, upsell, I should be able to get the money out of that if there's more. B, why wouldn't I want to stay involved so I could see if that stuff works, so I could then go ask for referrals, right? And use them as a reference account for my own territory. Like it's insane to me that reps would just sign a contract and say, peace. It's like, dude, do you realize how much value is in what you just did there? Do you know how much easier it is to get a referral from an existing account that's enjoying what you sold them than it is to make a cold call? Like, are you crazy? Yeah. So, I think the best sales reps will do that. Now, the challenge always comes now when it comes to scale. Predictable revenue helped us scale. It did. It was a cheap way of scaling. It was a faster way of scaling, but it also was a faster way of scaling when, again, money was free, grow at all costs, nobody gives a shit. So I don't know how the full cycle sales moves back to in the SaaS world, because we also have to recognize, I always have to do this. Like, I've lived in the SaaS world for 15 years of my career. And sometimes I panic. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm becoming irrelevant. I got to do this right out. You step 1 foot outside of SaaS and it's like sales 1985 all over again. So like, what's old is new again. I think what SaaS is going to do is actually come back to what sales was and is for quite a few companies. Right. And that's why I think you got to broaden the skill set. And it's daunting, because you not only have to know the full cycle, you also have to know a lot more about the product these days, because you can't just, rely on your SE. You can't just wait 2 weeks to schedule a meeting with somebody who knows what they're talking about and be the quarterback at this point. Like, if you're not bringing value to almost every conversation, you're going to be irrelevant pretty damn quick. And the reps who, oh yeah, whatever, John, AI is just like the internet and we all have the issues. It's like, no, you're wrong. And I challenge any rep to do this right now who's listening to this, any manager, anybody listening to this, go into ChatGPT right now, or pick your platform, I don't care, and pretend like you're a customer. Pretend like you're a prospect for your solution. So for me, I would go in and I would say something like, hey, I'm a VP of sales of a 50-person sales team. I got 20 SDRs, I got 30 AEs. I'm looking at some prospecting training for my team here. Tell me about the JV sales training. What do I need to know about it? What are the pros and cons? How does he compare himself against how does his training compare against the top 3 other vendors on G2 Crowd? What questions I should be at? When you realize in a 5-minute conversation with ChatGPT, you get more value than you do some 22-year-old kid who's going to ask you bad questions and then wait a week to schedule a call with an AE who's going to ask you the same questions and add a little bit of value, and then wait another week for an SE to come in and ask the same questions and then try to add value. When you realize that flow right there compared to that, you realize how in trouble we are. Like, I just, side story here, I just had this experience, and I'm not just picking on sales here. I'm picking on, I'm Paul Revere here for everybody. Because here's an example. My daughter has had these really bad stomach. She's 14 years old. She's had these really bad stomach issues for the past couple of months, out of nowhere. And it's just like debilitating stuff. Like, shit, what's going on? So we've gone to doctors and GI specialists and all this other stuff, right? And, going to doctors when you're trying to, they talk over your head, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. It's just like, what the hell is happening? And then everybody that you talk to, when you tell, oh, my kid has stomach issues. Oh, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? No, I haven't, right? So I was getting so overwhelmed with all this stuff. I was like, So I created a little custom GPT. And I said, act as a GI specialist for a 14-year-old girl. I want you to be the best GI specialist in the world. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem my daughter's having. Okay. Here's all the blood tests that we've taken here. And every doctor that I met with, I recorded the conversation, transcribed it, and dumped it into the GPT. We then had her track what she was eating. And then after she was we had a scale of 1 to 10, like how bad is your stomach, right? 1, nothing, 10, I got to go to the hospital. So I took all that information, dumped it in there, and asked questions. Then if you and I were talking and you were like, oh, have you heard of SIBO? Oh, what's that? I put it in there. Should I be worried about that, right? And I didn't look for the answers, but I looked at to ideate and understand and be like, hey, what, is this, should I be worried about this? Why is that? So now I got all this information. I'm learning faster than I've ever learned before, right? And not relying on the doctor to give me the answer either, right? Just to validate some things too. So we scheduled a meeting with a nutritionist. We went in and I said to the GPT, I said, I want you to give me a 2-page prep doc for a nutritionist. Like, what would a nutritionist need to know to get up to speed of what's going on with my daughter compared to what a GI specialist would need to know, right? So I said, give me a 2-page document that a nutritionist would value to get up to speed on what's happening with my daughter. And then give me 10 questions I should ask to the nutritionist with the goal in mind of figuring this out, right? So we walked in. I handed the woman the 2-page document, and this got rid of the whole, so tell me what's been going on, right? Like, you ask a 14-year-old girl, tell me what's been going on. She's going to say her stomach hurts. You're not going to get any value out of that. So I said, hey, could you just please read this, like, before we get started? Read these 2 pages, okay? Mm-hmm. And so she reads it, and she's like, holy shit, like, this is great. I go, yeah, I know. I go, okay, so here's some questions I had. I asked her these questions, and this woman talked in circles for about 30 to 45 minutes. Maybes and you could and and possiblies and I was trying not to be rude to my daughter in front of my daughter, but after about 40 minutes I was like, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt here. I'm actually more confused now than I was before we came in here. Mm-hmm. I go, my goal was I was going to use this AI to educate myself, but then not rely on its answers because I don't believe it. It lies, it cheats, all that stuff. And that my goal is to come to you, an expert in the field, and kind of skip the line a little bit of all the bullshit and have you help us figure out a plan here. I'm like, are we going to get to that? Like, are we going to get to that plan? She's like, and she talked in sort of, and I was like, cool. Like, oh, sorry, we got a hard stop here. Daughter and I got to go. Thank you so much for your time. We walked out. I was dumber walking out than I was walking in. I looked at my insurance bill. It cost me $500 to have that meeting. It took 3 hours out of my life, and it took 2 weeks to schedule. Again, I knew more before using ChatGPT than I did with that conversation. I then translate that to sales reps. So a client is going to get on the phone with a kid who doesn't know anything but ask them questions, wait 2, 3, 4, 5 days to schedule another call with somebody who's going to ask them the same questions and probably give a little bit of more value, hopefully AE. And then they're going to schedule another call with an AE, with an SE to see the demo, and probably that be the person that can get some real answers to them. But they're probably going to ask the same questions because the transition between the AE and the SE is never good. So what's the value of the sales rep in that equation? And I'm having a harder and harder time figuring that out. If you can't realize that right now, I almost think you're already irrelevant and you just don't know it yet. So we as sales professionals need to wake up and stop going through the motions here, because this isn't an if, this is a when.
Yeah, so there's a few things you said, and I'm with you on how the world has changed. I came to this aha moment, and I'm not trying to pat myself in the back, but I came to the aha because I stepped out, like you said, I stepped out of SaaS for about 5 years, went into automation and manufacturing, and that world is very different. But the other thing is, it's so technologically advanced in certain areas, but the skills of sales and marketing just aren't the same as what we have in SaaS.
Right.
But why I come to that is because I think that AI today is doing for SaaS what robotics did to the automation world.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of that, of like, hey, I want a robotic arm to pick something up, or I need it to do a specific task because that's deemed a lower value task. I don't need to have somebody reach out and I got repetitive issues. I'm probably going to have, health health and safety issues, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to remove lower value tasks so that I can put humans on higher value tasks. And I start to see that now more and more. And like you with like you mentioned about ChatGPT and the worlds of the, I've Claude is the one that I go to. It doesn't matter which one, you just pick one.
Yep.
But the idea now is I taught this course, and it was this notion of an AI sandwich. I don't know if you ever heard about this. It's human, AI, human. The human prompts the AI to do a thing, and then the human has to validate whether it's correct or not. And so I think that that's something that I've constantly been talking about with teams, etc. And why I say that is because I think it comes full circle to what we're doing now. Everything today on the internet is written. You can now what used to take me, admittedly, go back to even Basho. When you taught me how to do a Basho email, do you know the first one that I wrote took me like almost 2 hours?
Probably, yeah.
It was so hard because it was hard for me to go, I need to read all this, I need to ideate, I need to compile, and then I need to figure out what the hell am I going to send. Now you can do that much faster with creating some of the prompts, etc. So it's now going to the point of, I think, expertise and experience is what AI needs from humans.
Yes.
And that's the missing piece. And so if we bring it even back to the whole notion of everything you talked about of, I learned all of this, even bringing it back to the whole topic of churn, of saying, hey, look, I sold the account, because there was a point where we went new business and then you handed it off and that was it. But I think that new business is starting to dissipate. I think we're now going back to go, hey, you know what? We're actually really successful when we had that rep managing accounts. They were managing certain ones, plus they were taking on new business and they were staying engaged, etc. So I see that that's a viewpoint today. But I'm saying all of this because I want to ask you the question of, as you went from, hey, look, I was a bit hands off. Now I became full cycle. Now I've got all of the stuff with ChatGPT or the LLMs of the world. I can now be more involved. I don't want to say involved. I can be more educated on the accounts and start to ask myself, hey, here's my account. This is what I'm doing. What are the gaps for me?
Yep.
Is that something that you're seeing other companies, the best companies, do? Where they're taking their accounts going, hey, this is my account. These are the things I'm doing. What are the risks? How should I be involved? What are some of the things that I should be thinking about so that this account, when I talk to them on Monday, don't churn? Are you seeing any of that?
I'm seeing reps, not companies. I mean, MIT just came out with the report that 95% of corporate AI initiatives fail. So I think AI is extremely powerful for individuals. I think it's a bit tough right now for organizations. And the reason is the top-down decision approach right now is really hard to justify, especially in a kind of a mid-market company, right? Because by the time you identify what the problem is you're trying to solve, then you go look for the 2 or 3 vendors or 4 or 5 vendors, then you decide on one, then you go ahead and implement it and you do the training on it. I mean, you're 9 to 12 months out of any real implementation of any software at this point. Right. And even as fast as AI goes, especially if you're looking for a systemic across the organization thing that everybody gets trained on. And I don't know about you, I can't look 9 to 12 months out at this point and tell anybody what the world's going to look like. Right. I can't look out 9 to 12 days from here. And so I think that's why they're failing. And things are just moving so fast that as soon as you invest in something, next week it's irrelevant, right? Or there's something better, or there's something cheaper, or there's a free version of it, or whatever. And so that's why I go back to individual sales reps. We need to empower individual sales reps and use this stuff to, do that. And the best reps I know are doing that. They are looking at their holistic. They are using it to augment, not automate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I come into this is, your sandwich analogy is a good one because, so many reps look, we've gone from a search engine to an answer engine. Mm. And, if Google, look, we could all argue that Google kind of fed us whatever it felt like feeding us, so we didn't really have a choice. But, at least there was a perception of choice where we Google something and I have to kind of read through some shit and be like, okay, that makes sense to me. Now I'm going to use that. Now it gives you AI just gives you the answer. And for people like you and me who are curious, who are skeptical, who have business acumen, right? It's a superpower because it's like, oh, wait, tell me more about that. Where'd you get that information? What's the devil's advocate side of that? Ask me 10 questions to make sure you're clear on what I'm trying to get out of this. Could you please source check that for me? And so it's like, holy shit, go do that research for me. And then, oh, wow, find triggers, why you now, right? So why don't you give me 20 triggers for this company that I could use to personalize with. Where'd you find that one? What's that one about? Why is that relevant to what I do? Cool. All right, now let me write this. There, in that regard, man, it's a superpower. The problem is the vast majority of people are lazy. And they're going to use it as the answer engine. And they're going to copy, paste. And in that scenario, I fundamentally do not understand the value of the human. So I'm there with you. This microphone is hooked up to ChatGPT. You will never, if you follow me on social, I will never, ever, and I've committed to this, put a post out there that is generated purely by ChatGPT. And I have it, it knows I've given it all my blogs. It knows, all the trends that are out there, and I could push a button. This is write a blog optimized for LinkedIn because I was lazy today, and cut, paste, and send. Right? I could easily do that. For people who don't know me, it would sound great. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't do that. I put this microphone on. I go, here's an idea that I'm trying to think through here a little bit. I want to put this post out about this and AI and blah, blah, blah. So here's kind of my thought process on it. Could you help me just kind of structure this in an organized way so that, I can take a look at it and the flow of it, make sure it's optimized. Yeah. But it's my original thought using AI right. And then to your point, the AI does its thing. It grabs my word vomit into this thing and then it puts it in a nice structure. I'm like, okay, I like it. But then I am the last mile. Mm-hmm. I think we as humans have to be the last mile. Gary Vaynerchuk, actually, I took this from him a long time ago. As a matter of fact, I went to his office, 2017. As a matter of fact, he has this 4D session that you can go to his office in New York City, and all his executives, like you and 10 other entrepreneurs, whatever, and all the executives come in. They talk about what they're doing and the best companies in the world, and then Gary comes in and does a Q&A. And at the time, Salesforce. A couple of reps from Salesforce left Salesforce and they said, hey, John, we created an artificial, this was back in 2017. This is John, we created this artificial intelligence bot that creates super hyper personalized emails. And it's based off of your, right? It's based off of your email, right? We did it based off of you and we want to show it to you. And I was like, please, man. Yeah, sure. Fine. Whatever. Send me whatever. I'll look at your dumb little point, right? What they sent me was I was like, what? It was so personalized and so tailored. And so I pinged him back and I was like, wait, there was no human involvement in writing this email. And he goes, no human involvement other than picking the article to use from our app. And it took 30 seconds to write. I was like, holy shit. Now think about that back in 2017. Now it's like, yeah, obviously, right? But back in 2017, I had an exit. I panicked because, you know me, man, like I did a song and dance back then to train you on like a full day and a little, but it was really to show you how to send a fucking email, right? So now I'm like, wait a minute. Now everything the core of what I train is now a Chrome plugin. I'm like, what the So when I went to Gary and I had my Q&A with him, I said, Gary, I got to ask, like, I just saw this robot write an email better, faster than I ever could. That makes me very nervous about where things are headed right now as far as the value of a sales rep. I go, what do we do? And he said to me, he goes, look, don't worry about the tech. You're not going to beat it. It's always going to be, evolving and getting better. He goes, but be the last mile. I said, well, he said, be the last mile. He goes, let it do all the heavy lifting. Let it do the research. Let it even write the email for you if you want. But right before you hit send, make sure you humanize it. Because that factor, and I think there's always going to be a human factor here that just AI can't pick up on. So I don't know about you. You could send me the most personalized email right now. If you give me 100 emails, 50 written by AI and 50 written by humans, I would bet my house that I would be 90% accurate in which ones were which. Because I can't describe it, but there's just something about an AI email fully generated or a post that it just doesn't have a soul. There's something missing. It just doesn't have a soul. And I think there's something, I don't know what it is, but I think there's something about humans that can pick up on that. And for me, I think my contention here is if it is AI and it's obvious AI and somebody says it's AI, I'm actually really interested in checking it out, learning it, like reading whatever the post is, right? But the minute it tries to pretend like it's human and I sniff that it's AI, I discredit the entire thing. Like it could be the best email I've ever read in my life, but if I see that M dash, I'm like, fuck this. Like I literally, like if it's a post, I'm like, wow, that's the most interesting. Oh, fuck, there's that dumbass monster emoji. So give a shit, like I literally, and I think that's a lot of people. It's like, if I feel duped, I'm going to discredit all of this. But if you use it the right way to augment and not automate, to ideate, to come up with ideas and to challenge and to brainstorm, as opposed to just looking for the answer, cutting, pasting, sending, like then the analogy is Iron Man, right? So that is the analogy that we have to be. Because if you look at Tony Stark, right, he's got it all, right? He's good looking, he's rich, he's super smart, like jerk anyways, right? But Tony, if he tried to go out there and fight all those aliens, he'd get smoked, right? So what did he have to do? He had to create the suit. But the suit, right? I don't know if you remember that first suit in Iron Man. It was like clunky and it blew up in the desert, right? Yep. He didn't really become Iron Man until he added Jarvis.
Yeah.
So now you got the human, the suit, and Jarvis, and the AI. Ooh, you can do some damage, right? But I worry that the vast majority of people aren't on that boat. They're not willing to evolve. They don't think this is a big deal. And I am genuinely concerned. I am genuinely optimistic for those of us that are willing to evolve and try this shit out and learn with it and all that other stuff. I am genuinely pessimistic for the people that aren't.
Yeah, it goes back to one of your things you've said. I think you end every one of your conversations, get 1% better every day.
Just get better.
And so even with the notion, even with everything we're seeing with AI, did we get 1% better every day? Could that information, that ideation through AI, make me 1% better? Could I take all my information, drop it in, and go, what don't I know about this account that I'm at risk of? Hey, have you considered these people? Hey, did you realize they hired these executives recently from these different companies? Oh, I didn't even realize. I didn't notice they hired Steve Jobs. That's a bad example. I don't know that. I didn't realize they hired. Oh, and he has connections to this company. I'm at risk.
Yep. Well, I mean, and it's so easy right now. Like there's, I mean, you don't even need the specialized GPTs because the big ones do it. But there was like a 10K analyzer GPT that came out early days, and I was like, I've always ignored 10Ks, right? Because I'm like, oh God, I don't like, I'm a state school kid. I drank my way through 4 years of college, right? I don't like reading. I probably read like 5 books in my life, right? So you put a annual report in front of me, it's like snooze fest, right? I might read the first paragraph from the CEO to see if I can pull out a quote from the CEO, but all the EBITDA and boring. Like I don't know how to read that shit, right? I came across when all this GPT stuff was happening, and someone I was like, oh, what's this 10K analyzer GPT all about? Got it, grabbed a 10K, plugged it in there, ripped it apart, gave me a 1-page summary with the key things and how it aligned with my solution and how I could help, and tailored a message to get. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, oh my God, like that was easy. You know what I mean? And then I was like, well, hold on, where in the 10K did you find this information? Please tell me what page so I can validate it, right? Because I didn't, overly trust it. But it is so easy right now. And the other part is, right, so churn, let's go back to this. Relationships are about value at the end of the day. Like, right. People say they buy from people they like. That's bullshit. They buy from people they trust, and they buy from people that bring value to the equation. And value is different for everybody. But I don't think it's ever been easier, quite frankly, to add value to an account. Because I used to say, like, look, I sell sales training. It always kills me when I interview sales trainers or influencers, right? And they're like, oh, build your brand and, get people to come to you. And I'm like, we sell crack to crackheads, and we're crackheads, okay? Like, I sell sales to sales reps, and I'm a sales rep. So it's pretty fucking easy for me to build my brand, to add value to a VP of sales. You know what I mean? Like, tell a 22-year-old kid who's selling to a CISO to bring value to a CISO. Like, shut up, right? And so I always struggled with it. Like, how do you do that? Well, you got to build your brand. You got to be curious. You got to all that other stuff. Now, hey, here's a CISO on a current account of mine that I'm trying to get a meeting with and trying to add value to. ChatGPT, here's their business, here's the LinkedIn profile, here's the company page. Could you, what are like 10 different topics that I could do deep research, I could have you do deep research on that would bring value to a CISO in that company based on kind of some of what's going on with their business? But oh, here's 10 things. That one's kind of interesting. Could you go do deep research on that topic and produce a 3-page document that is hyper focused on that person and maybe giving them some ideas of trend analysis of what's happening in the industry? 5 minutes later, you got this polished, kick-ass 1-page, you validate where it's coming from. And hey, Carl, I've been keeping myself updated on you guys. I actually noticed where you're going from a business standpoint. And, I was doing some deep research here and coming up with a couple of ideas. I thought you might want to share them with you because it's some pretty interesting intel about where the things are going. I just thought you might get some value out of that. Like, that can be done in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So
if you're not doing that, you're going to lose, going back to churn, you're going to lose the people that do bring that value. Right? I all the way back when my example of financial services. The guy manages my stock portfolio, right? We get it together once a year and we sit down and go over these charts and graphs, and I don't understand any of it, right? And I'm like, okay, did we make money this year or did we lose money? That basically was it, right? Yeah. And if we made money, great, keep doing it. If we lost money, stop doing that. This other guy was every day, and this was years ago, like he would email me, hey John, you see this trend out there? You might want to take a look at this. And this was stuff he only sold insurance, right? He didn't sell the stock, investment stuff. But he understood what my priorities were, right? And he had this business, but he kept like, hey John, what about this? And I'd take those ideas and I'd be like, hey, and I'd go to my financial advisor. I'd be like, hey, can we do this? Is this something we should be looking at? Yeah, we can do that. Cool. One day the insurance kid joined another company. And that company now did insurance and investment. I gave my investment guy one more chance. December 20th, end of the year, Panera Bread, Woburn, Massachusetts. We sit down almost every time. And I was wondering if he was going to bring any more value to me than that conversation. Nope, did the same conversation. At the end of it, said, hey, been a pleasure. I just got to let you know I'm going to be transferring my money over to this kid. Now, mind you, that person, the financial, it was a friend of mine. It was my wife's friend from high school, her boss, right? And so I knew his kids. We had drinks, right? So we had a great relationship, friend-ish, right? But he wasn't bringing any value to me. That friendship, I could have drinks with anybody. I could go out with anybody and have hang out with the kids. I'm managing my money. I'm going to give it to somebody who's bringing value to me. So that's the same thing that we're in here. If you take your clients for granted right now, if you are proactively thinking about how to consistently add value to their life outside of what your product or service does, by the way, you're just ripe for somebody swooping in and easily taking that account from you if you're not paying attention. So yes, all this stuff can prevent churn. If you use it right, you can see the red flags. You can set up systems to get alerts when things happen. You can do quick research and find and come with hypothesis and perspective and challenge, right? You can do all that stuff. You just need to be curious enough. You need to have some business acumen behind you, and you need to be willing to dig into this stuff and just go like brainstorm. And why is that important? I don't know. It's never been easier to learn something at this point. You just got to be willing to do it.
And it almost makes it sound, if I take all of what you just said, because I think it's incredibly powerful, be the dot connector that people can't see. You see all of these things, how do they connect? And then you bring some perspective. And that's probably the thing that I take out of this, what you just said, is have a perspective, have a point of view, and bring that. Because if you're not willing to do it, the next insurance and the next connection point that can show me the value and say, hey, by the way, I know you talked about this, this, and this, and I see this is where we're going. Those things connect here. Have you thought about it? Have you thought about this? Oh, you're making me think, you're bringing me value.
Yes.
There you go.
The days of solution selling, of me sitting in front of you and being like, so Carl, tell me about your problem. And then after you tell me about all your stuff, like it's always hysterical to me about, we meet for the first time. And I'm like, so Carl, tell me about your priorities. Sure, 22-year-old kid. Let me tell you all we had a board meeting the other day. Let me share my deck with you about our profitability. Are you out of your mind? Yeah. Right? And so even if they entertain that and they are like, okay, fine, I'll tell you. But first of all, and this is a tip for people, we're all taught in sales to ask open-ended questions. The problem with open-ended questions is you're asking the person you're asking that to do a lot of mental gymnastics to figure out how to answer that question. And so because for instance, if I say, tell me about your priorities, if I decide to tell you, right, then now I got to think of all the different priorities that I'm dealing with. I got to distill them down to the ones that are most relevant to this conversation that I think, and then articulate those. That's making me do a lot of work. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's why you usually get generic answers when you say, tell me about your revenue, blah, 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 right? But anchoring, there's a psychology to it where you come in with a perspective and you anchor on something, because somebody's desire to correct you or elaborate on that thing is far greater than it is to answer an open-ended question. So when you come in and say, instead of tell me about your priorities, hey, Carl, we're dealing with other executives in your position in your industry, and some of the things they're bringing to the table for us, telling us that they're challenged with our X, Y, and Z. And I noticed based on what you're doing, so my hunch is that you guys are dealing with some of the same stuff. Am I on the right track here? Your desire to go, well, yes, and or no, but, and then elaborate on that is so much more. Mm-hmm. And it's bringing, to your point, value to the conversation. Time to value now is more critical than ever. Like, I have zero patience for sales reps who are going to go through the bullshit. You know what? I did an experiment. Again, the vast majority of sales reps are in trouble. I did an experiment where I took 20 phone calls. And this was actually, this was even before the AI stuff was happening. I took 20 phone calls from 20 sales reps in the tech space too. This wasn't I got a decent reputation in this tech space. I should be, And the first question, I encourage anybody listening to this, please do this. When you're taking a meeting from a sales rep, the first question that you should ask the sales rep before you get started, and I do this all the time. Hey, so Carl, before we get started here, we're looking forward to the conversation. Before we get started, hey, could you just tell me a little about what you know about me? Like, what do you know about me, my business, that type of stuff, just so we can kind of level set here? Carl, 14 out of 20 couldn't even tell me I did sales training. And guess what? Those lasted 5 minutes because I hung up as soon as they couldn't tell me. Mm. And by the way, all I wanted you to do was say, well, oh yeah, John, I see you do some sales training. You work for some pretty cool companies, right? It looks like you got some online and remote support here. Like, that's literally all you had to do. And we continued the conversation. Mm-hmm. 14 out of 20, 70% of the people that I talked to didn't come prepared. They didn't have a perspective. They didn't even know what I did. They were going through the motions. Mm. And if you are going through the motions right now, and I'll add, unfortunately, I don't think it's a lot of these reps' fault. We have way over-engineered the sales process. I position 2010 to 2022 as the golden age of sales. If you got into sales, tech sales after 2010, sorry, hasn't been that hard. We've been able to blast out template emails and cadences, setting up disco calls with anybody with a pulse, asking dumbass bank questions, droning through demos and offering a discount. Like that's been sales for 10 years. So we have a whole generation of sales reps that don't even have the fundamentals. I'm a science guy, the science art, right? Like I think sales should be more of a science than an art, but man, we have way over indexed on science and we have lost the art of sales. And we got to get back to it because that's the only thing that's left. IQ is over. IQ is over. EQ is everything. So the ability to have this conversation, the ability to question, the ability to be curious, the ability to be, to want to give a shit enough about you, about your business, to care enough to spend the 5 minutes it takes now. Like I used to say, give a shit. Well, yeah, it's going to probably take about an hour to give a shit because you got to set it up. Now, in 5 minutes before this conversation, I can go in and be like, holy shit, look what you're doing. And here's some cool questions. You know what I mean? Like it's criminal right now if you're not on that page.
Yeah. Show up prepared, even if you are having the first conversation, if you're having a renewal, if you're having an account review, it doesn't really matter. Now, you more than ever, if you don't show up, you're going to be prepared. You're going to be walked out of the room. And the other thing that was something taught to me, I can't remember who taught it to me, but anyways, it was, you have an hour meeting, you prepare for 30 minutes. Yeah. You have a 30-minute meeting, you prepare for 15 minutes. You prepare half the time. That's been rooted inside of me. Like I can't tell you how long, even today. I know I some of you heard me talk about John, but and John, I've talked to John several times way back in the day when I was with Vidyard and, connected him to certain different people. And we met at, there was a point where we met at Dreamforce and you're like, hey, this gong thing. I'm like, oh, do you want to meet the CEO? And you're like, what? Here, this is you should talk to him for all these reasons. I wouldn't say that I can call you and say, hey, John, it's Carl. And you'd be like, who? Like, oh, I know exactly. I think there's a part of me that has a relationship with you, and I know we joke about the Dolphins and the Patriots and all these other things when we do chat, but it's not all the time. And even today, I think I prepared going into this meeting for about an hour and a half, just because I wanted to make sure that I was focused on the topic. And the other thing too is I'll tell everybody, I told John coming in, hey, I have one planted question. It's the beginning. And that's it. The rest of it, I just want to be present. And I think that presence and being here, being focused, taking notes, those are the things that we have to be focused on more than ever today. And I just realized, John, we're 52 minutes and this flew by. And I said it was going to be like 35, 40 minutes. So I apologize. So not to keep you longer. And I feel like we could go much longer. But if we can wrap up, because more than ever. Everybody likes new, nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can cause either friction or uncertainty. Yep. So for somebody that's listening to this, or there's a company and says, hey, you know what, my churn, I got to be paying attention to it. What are 2 or 3 things actionable things you can say, hey, do these things or look at these things. So when they come into the office on Monday morning, they can go, okay, I'm going to look at these 2 or 3 things that John said so that I can make sure that I'm on top of my churn numbers and don't see that massive drop.
All right. So I think 2 things. I think you need to turn your sales org into a sales lab and stop with the top-down decision-making and get everybody involved. So here's what I would do on a weekly basis. Ideally on a weekly basis, I would schedule 2 hours on a Friday afternoon. And I would get my entire GTM team, including customer success and all that fun stuff. And I would get them all together, put them in groups, 2, 3, 4 people at a time. And we'd pick a topic. I don't care what it was, like how to add value to existing accounts, how to, research and get alerts on how to prepare for meetings, how to update CRM, whatever it is, whatever aspect of the sales process or relationship process is not exactly optimal. And then you give everybody a framework and you give them an hour and you say, okay, everybody, you got an hour to go figure out a better way of doing that. Okay. Then you got junior reps with senior reps. So you got business acumen and tech savvy working together. You got an engineer in there who's good at prompting. You got a marketer in there, whatever it is, right? So the whole GTM team is working together in these little, things on very specific problems. Then at the end of the hour, everybody presents whatever their solution to that issue is. And then you vote on it. Say, okay, what would you like? You know, who likes it? Okay, cool. That's a good. So now next week, let's implement that. Let's go ahead and immediately apply that to our existing customers, to whoever it is, and see if it makes a difference. And you just keep doing that. You keep ideating, and every single week, and you use your sales organization, you use your GTM organization to figure shit out, because agility right now is the number one thing. And if you are not working together, if you are still siloed as sales, marketing, customer success, account management, you're done. You're absolutely done. Account management has so many insights into what's going on from a business standpoint for the new business team, and the new business team can get data and insights to the existing, right? So you got to create a format that people can work together here. So that would be one thing I would say is super actionable, easy to do, free of charge. You don't even have to pay a dime for that. The other one is get your customers involved in the cycle. So I would what I talk to my clients about is, you know, pick a persona once a month, right? So call it CFOs and financial services, I don't know, whatever. Have the rep 2 hours first of the month. First 30 minutes, everybody searches, uses ChatGPT, whatever it is, and says, hey, what does CFOs and financial services care about today? Like, what are the top priorities? What top challenges? Then ideally, you go get a customer that fits that exact same profile of your target, right? And you get them in for 30 minutes, and you have the team on a Zoom session or whatever, ask them questions. Now, instead of asking, oh, what keeps you up at night? No, what keeps you up at night, ChatGPT? What keeps the CFO and financial services up at night? Cool. What are some of the priorities? Now I'm asking, instead of what keeps you up at night, to the CFO, hey, we're seeing, you know, these trends, and, you know, are you seeing the same thing? And, oh, by the way, when you know, you were using our solution, before you were using our solution, what was the problem? And when now, what would you tell somebody, right? So you're having the reps talk to the person that they are about to create messaging and go after from a target standpoint. Mm-hmm. Then you spend an hour crafting messaging based on those priorities and challenges that person told you and you learned. You create a sequence to this, and then you execute. So now every rep rips about 20 or 30 accounts into their profile who fit that exact profile, and you send 100 emails out, make 100 phone calls, whatever it is, and you test different variables to that persona. So there's this feedback loop here. And at the end of the week, then in the month, you just look at what worked and what didn't work, and you rinse, repeat. So this way you're including existing customers, right? So that's, you know, more touch points, more value, more integration. You're now focusing your GTM approach on those type of customers. And so you have stories to tell. So you start attracting the same type of customer. And then the third one that I would do is this is actually an extra one that I just thought of, is I would take every single one of your customers right now, the top 10 customers who are doing really well in this economy and really getting a lot of value out of your solution. And I would do an exercise for the team, and I would have them dissect the shit out of those 10 customers. I would get everybody in a room, and I would say, okay, what are the commonalities of these clients? What are the best, you know, why are they our best customers? Because there's that nucleus of ICP. Most people look at ICP in very topical, very surface level shit, industry size, number of locations, whatever, right? But there are so many nuances that make the real client the most profitable ones, the happiest ones, the longest term ones. Like, there's nuances about how their organization is structured, what stage of the business are they at, what tech stack do they have, right? Excuse me.
Bless you.
Who are their customers? Who do they sell to, right? And this is all business acumen. Mm-hmm. This is all business. So this is what the reps learn. All those examples I just mentioned are about learning and helping the reps understand business and understand who they're going after and all that stuff. Because business acumen is sorely lacking right now. And if there's any skill I would tell any rep to improve on, it's business acumen. Forget about the techniques. Forget about all that shit. Learn business. Learn how to have a conversation. So those three things, if you do those three things, they're all free of charge. You don't have to spend a goddamn dime on them. Your org will evolve and survive.
All I heard from that, and I don't mean to distill it to one word, is curiosity. Yeah. If you're not curious and you can't be curious, it's not going to go well. So, okay, let's finish. Let's wrap this up here. That wraps up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. John, thank you very much for sharing these incredibly invaluable insights today and some strategies you can put into action on Monday. If you found value in today's conversation, like and subscribe to the episode or the podcast, wherever you listen to, so you never miss an episode. If you got feedback on, hey, Carl, you can be better, or you'd like to talk about a certain topic, or you want to be a guest, love to hear from you. Thank you for investing your time with us today. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn obstacles into opportunities. See you next time.